Gate, are you ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay. At this time, I'd like to call the February 25th, 2025 meeting of the Carver Select Board to order. The time is 6:01. This meeting is being recorded by Area 58 Community Access Media, Channel 9, and will be posted by Area 58 on YouTube as soon as possible. There are openings on several committees. Please refer to the front page on our website for a listing and application. Would you all mind please standing for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Ryan, you care to lead us in the community prayer?
Okay. Almighty God, humbly we pray your blessing as we concern our life with the opportunity to serve our community. Enhance us with your spirit of dignity and selflessness. May we become instruments of support and understanding as we seek to bring an environment of trust and purpose among all who provide the many services that make us all that we can become. Help us achieve the goals of our commitment in this office that is now our responsibility, and especially we lift up prayers for all the citizens of our community that we've been allowed to serve, that they may discover the fullness and joy of life that we all seek, and keep those serving in our armed forces and our first responders in our hearts and thoughts. Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. All right. First item on the agenda is citizens' participation. Would anyone like to come up and address the board? Seeing no one come to the mic. First item on our agenda, or should say second, is Chapter 61A, Notice of Intent to Convert to Other Use, 27 Wenham Road, Assessors Map, Parcel ID 100-6-0, 100-5-0, 100-7-A. Would anyone like to come up? Please state your name and organization.
Good evening. Thank you for having us. My name is David Burson. I'm an attorney from Legacy Counselors, PC. With me tonight is Kyle Murphy on behalf of the Wenham PV1 LLC project.
Great. Would you like to explain what you're planning?
Absolutely. So we submitted a notice of intent to convert to this board, specifically looking to remove some property, Cranberry Bog, 27 Wenham Road, for purposes of installing a dual-use solar voltaic agricultural array. This is a bit different than a standard solar array, and quite frankly, there's a new law that was passed back in 2022 that effectively allowed certain projects that are designed in a specific way to promote both the agricultural use as well as the solar use on site, to allow those uses to continue within Chapter 61A classification. Unfortunately, it's a brand new law, and the way that the legislature has drafted it has kind of created a catch-22, so to speak, with respect to how these projects can be continued in chapter land. So essentially the way that the law works is, assuming that these projects have been approved through the DOER and have been certified as these specific types of ASTGU solar units is what they're called, then they can remain in chapter land. However, you can't get your certification from DOER unless you've got your permitting completed with the local permitting process, which you can't do until you first remove the property from chapter land. So unfortunately, we have to now remove this property from chapter land, and we will plan on putting it back into chapter land once we've received our final permits and can submit this for approval through the DOER.
Sounds like a mouthful.
Quite convoluted, yes.
Any questions from the board?
Sure. So you're going to put in solar. So you have to remove bog, you're saying, to install this? And
I apologize, I don't want to cut you off. No, so this is actually going to be, this array is actually going to be located above approximately 1.62 acres of a 7-acre cranberry bog. So you'll still be able to grow the cranberries and harvest the cranberries that are located underneath the solar array.
Okay. And so what's before us is that because it's a change of use, it's before us to recommend to exercise the option to purchase the land. So I guess I could make a motion not to exercise that option.
Second.
Oh, wait, we have a motion and we have a second. Are there any other questions, issues, or concerns? Seamus?
Yes, I'm sorry that you have to go through this. I mean, it's crazy.
It is what it is. I mean, that's the reality of a new law. It's untested, so we're effectively the guinea pigs.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for doing it.
So, it says 10 acres here. You're saying it's 7 acres?
The cranberry bog is 7 acres.
7 of the 10.
Correct.
Okay.
I think the entire lot is approximately 25 acres.
Yeah, I guess the lot total is roughly 25. I think it's about like 27 acres. The 10-acre figure that I think was cited in the notice of intent, that's the area within the proposed limit of disturbance. So basically the area of the site that will be impacted during construction is roughly 10 acres, and the 7 acres is the area of just the cranberry bog, just to clarify.
So for, I guess, my informational purposes, what's the flow of, once you take it out of 61A, do they have to do a 5-year clawback payment?
Yeah, so my understanding is that we will have to pay the rollback taxes, even though we're putting it back in chapter land and there's no ceasing of the agricultural use on site.
So you pay it and we receive it, but within a period of time, it might go back into 61A, so then we have to refund it? Is that it?
My understanding is you will not have to refund it, that it's just paid to the town. It's essentially the cost of doing business for us.
Okay. And I guess unrelated to this, I'm curious, when it's fully functioning, you get the solar panels functioning, isn't there electrical currents now running through a bog? How does that work when people are picking it?
Yeah, so I mean, this is part of why these projects are a little more involved. They do require oversight by the Department of Energy Resources as well as the UMass Agricultural Extension. So hand in hand, they design these bogs so that they will be effectively safe even with a solar array located on top of them.
Interesting. Okay. All right, so we have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor of not exercising our right of first refusal? I always get that mixed up.
Yeah, that's good.
Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, 0. 5-0.
4-0.
Thank you very much. We do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you for doing this.
Have a good night.
Night.
All right, so next up we have acceptance and recommendation of the warrant articles for annual town meeting. I guess first item to add it to the warrant, would anyone like to make a motion to add Article 10 to the warrant?
I think we have Mr. Bentley here, if he wants to.
Do you want to discuss before we add? Okay.
We can do before or during it.
I'll make a motion to add it to the warrant.
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion to add it to the warrant, the second, and it's been seconded, and all those in favor of adding it to the warrant, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, 0. 4-0. All right. Mr. Bentley, would you mind coming up and giving us some information on this?
Sure. I'm Bob Bentley. I'm chairman of the Community Preservation Committee. We held our public meeting. We were required by law to have a public meeting and basically present all of the proposals to the public. We had very sparse attendance, as we normally do, and there's been 45 views of the Area 58 recording. So there's been a little bit of interest, but we basically have a number of items in front of you, of which the only ones that we're really going to be discussing in depth are going to be parts B, C, D, and E. And that's because those are the ones those are the specific projects that are requiring funding for this year. So we held our meeting and we discussed everything. Karen last year asked us to put in the total revenues that we were expecting, so I've added to the article. We anticipate estimated revenues of $880,000 this year. And the appropriations that we're looking at are for the committee administrative expenses, $30,450. And I can tell you that we never spend that. That money is, probably the biggest, or not probably the biggest expense that we have is our dues to the Community Preservation Coalition. But we never spend that much money, and any of the money that's not expended goes directly into our unrestricted reserves. So the and that I guess I want to actually the next item is number 2. It's a middle school, high school track debt service. That's $330,700. That's year 6 of the 10-year bond that we have. The third item is the Wheeliantic River Corridor Conservation Project for $375,000. I'll go through these, and then I'll go to each individual. The fourth item is the historic photograph artifact preservation for $5,000. The fifth item is Wenham Cemetery fencing, and then the sixth item is and that was for $13,000. The sixth item is the Union Society exterior trim repair and replacement for $67,000. And then the reserves are, even though we don't necessarily have to be putting $88,000 into this historic preservation reserve, because we're spending the money, a lot of the money in the historic photographed and Wenham Cemetery. We also have the open space reserve of $88,000, housing reserve of $88,000, and the reserve for that we have on the unrestricted reserve fund is $585,550. So now stepping back to, basically I'm going to discuss parts B, C, D, and E. And stepping back to part B, we've had some correspondence between us, the Conservation Commission, and the Buzzards Bay Coalition, who basically said, the Buzzards Bay Coalition came to us and said, we recommend that you change the wording slightly so that it sounds more like a conservation restriction as opposed to an outright purchase of 515 acres of land. It's Slocum Gibbs' property. It's Gary Garrettson's property. It's down in South Carver. It's actually abutting the town line, and so there's already another whole parcel in Wareham that's already been voted on. Town meeting in Wareham has already voted it, and basically it's all going to be contiguous. All of these bogs on this property are going to be, the overwhelming majority of the bogs are going to be taken out of production and turned into conservation land. It's going to be open for recreational use, and there's already a system of bog roads around there, so it's not going to take an awful lot of work to make more trails. So basically, it's 515 acres of land. I believe it's, and as I said, there's 1 or 2 bogs that they're going to be actually, the Buzzards Bay Coalition is going to be actually keeping in cranberry production, because it's newer vines and much higher producing. Everything else that is down there, I believe, are all the older producing vines, and that's where they're taking them out. So basically, this $375,000 is being used to purchase the conservation restriction on the land. It's actually not being used to purchase the property, it's purchasing the conservation restriction. Conservation restriction will be held in perpetuity by the Conservation Commission and administered by the Conservation Commission. So I've got some updated language that I propose to get to Elaine to change it, because what I wrote up initially was basically that the town was acquiring 515 acres of land, when in fact we're doing the conservation restriction with that money. So I've got some changes to Part B, and then I've got some changes to the informational summary, which just basically make it a little bit more understandable. So that's Part B. Part C is to appropriate $5,000 from the Community Preservation Historic Reserve Fund for the purpose of preserving historical photographs and artifacts currently in the possession of the Carver Historic District Commission. This was presented to us by Connie Shea. Connie said he had gone through and was looking at some of the photographs, and they were really disintegrating. He also found an old Army uniform that he wanted to somehow preserve a little bit better. So he agreed that $5,000 would be a good amount, and so we're recommending that. And then to see if the town will vote, Part D is to see if the town will vote to appropriate $13,000 from the Historic Reserve Fund for the purpose of completing the fencing of historic Wenham Cemetery. When the 5-lot subdivision went in on Ohana Way, the planning board apparently got the builder to put up one side of the fence, and there's 2 other sides that are missing. And Connie mentioned that he had gone into the cemetery, and there was some damage to some of the headstones. There was one headstone that was being used as a seat for a swing. So, we feel like if we can just finish the whole thing, that would be good. My belief is it won't cost $13,000, but he worked it out so that it would be making sure that it was covered. And in any of these projects, any money that's not expended goes back to either the pot of money that it came out of, or it goes directly into the unrestricted reserves. And Part E is to appropriate $67,000 from the Historic Preservation or unrestricted funds for the purpose of repairing and replacing the exterior trim on the Union Society building in South Carver. That was presented to us by Savory Moore. It's part of an ongoing process that the town has been funding through the Community Preservation Act to make sure that the building stays looking as nice as it is. We already have a historic preservation restriction on it, so everything will be done in accordance with the historical aspects of the building. And I put together the informational summary basically I think it helps the public to understand what it is that's being presented and why it is that's being presented, who presented it. As I said, on any of these projects, if there's money that's not expended, it all goes back to the community preservation funds. And that's the extent of what we recommended. The recommendation for items A, B, and E vote was 5-0. Parts C and D, whose vote was 4-0, and it's only 4-0 because Connie, being the presenter, didn't want to vote on those 2 historic preservation items.
All right, any questions from the board?
I have one question.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Bentley. I think these are all good projects. I do have one question on the Weweantic River project. If that goes into conservation, does that in any way impact the water usage of adjoining bogs that might use water that flows through there in any way?
I don't believe it does. I know that any bog owner that owns more than 5 acres of land has to have a Water Management Act permit. And so I assume that they're, anything that they do, I know that the Buzzards Bay Coalition is not trying to divert any water. So,
But this wouldn't, if we put this in conservation, does that in any way restrict an adjoining bog owner from using water that might flow through that area?
I don't believe so.
Comments, Mr. Harris?
Yeah, I have a quick comment on that. Presumably, I don't know if you know the landowner, but he's very aware of that sort of thing.
I do know.
His family's been running bogs for generations. I doubt seriously that he would set up this the conservation restrictions are written, so first of all, you allow nothing, then you put back in the things you want to allow. And we don't have it in front of us, but I'm sure I would be very stunned if that kind of thing weren't part of the restriction that they were allowed to do that, because it's a huge...
I do know the landowner, I just, I'm concerned that it might impact some adjoining bogs.
Yeah,
So where would that be documented? In the conservation restriction itself?
Yes, that would be written into the conservation restriction
yeah, I
itself.
believe it.
And when would we see that?
That's part of a much longer process.
Yeah, I'd be happy to speak to this part of it.
Come on up.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Bob. Good to meet you. I'm Emil Singh, Carver Conservation Agent.
Emil, speak into the mic.
Sure. Yeah, so like Bob said, this is a project where the Conservation Commission would be the ones who are actually utilizing these CPC funds to purchase the conservation restriction on the Slocum Gibbs property, which, the Conservation Commission has already, voted to support this project and, agreed to be a part of the conservation restriction. So the application for the conservation restriction would come, down the line when, these funds are actually being used, and once the Buzzards Bay Coalition purchases the property. So the conservation restriction document itself would be drawn up down the line. I think an important thing to recognize about this property, it's, this is the Weweantic River that we're talking about. So it's this is actually the largest river in the southeast of Massachusetts. It flows into Buzzards Bay. So it's a very dynamic and very large water body that is, not just on this property by any means. It's covering a large portion of the southeast Massachusetts. So the water itself, there's a bunch of people who probably have rights to that water, and the conservation restriction is not likely to change that aspect of this river. The conservation restriction is primarily, first and foremost, to restrict any kind of development on this property and restrict other types of uses of the property. So the water, on the land that will be owned by the Buzzards Bay Coalition, like Bob said, they're not planning to be drawing and using this water. So it's likely overall the outcome of this project will be that the water on this property is conserved and protected, more than it is currently. And I just want to, speak for the Conservation Commission that, we have, looked at this project, we fully support it, and it's, it's such a great opportunity for the town of Carver to have, a large piece of land that's open to the public. We have a lot of open space in Carver, but we don't have a lot of access for the public to actually get out there and enjoy, walking trails and recreation. So this I think is a really great opportunity. The Buzzards Bay Coalition is awesome. They manage their properties so well, and it would, they've worked so well with us so far. So it would be important for us to work with them and make sure the reason why the Buzzards Bay Coalition contacted myself and Bob is that the conservation restriction application itself, the state reviews that, and they are going to look at the town meeting article and how it's written to make sure that the CPC funds are being used in the appropriate way. So that's why, you know, Bob has worked with us and the Buzzards Bay Coalition to, you know, make that clear in that wording.
So, I'm sorry.
Okay.
So are you saying that we can't see the conservation restriction until after we pass the article?
The conservation restriction has not been drawn up for this, you know, at this time. There, you can, you know, kind of look at similar, you know, legal documents that have been, you know, we have another property in Carver, the Griffith Woods property, which, you know, is under conservation restriction. The Conservation Commission holds it, and the Buzzards Bay Coalition is the owner. So it would be, you know, likely very similar to that, but we don't have that document.
Sure.
Mr. Chair, so I think, Mr. Townsend, the issue here is the water rights, and the water rights are granted by the state. So if anyone has water rights to the Wee Wee Antic River, putting this in conservation doesn't take those rights away. Anyone who has the water rights to the Wee Wee Antic or any other water body is still allowed to use it. It's just not possible. I'm glad you brought up the Water Management Act, because that's really the key. You can't write something that would take away other landowners' rights to use a public body of water.
I understand that, but the word we used here was likely, and not that it wouldn't impact any adjoining bogs.
Well, my point is that it can't, because it's just the way these water management rights are written. You go to the DEP, you look up your rights, and if you have the right to use the Wee Wee Antic as a surface water point with water withdrawal source, then that's your right.
Okay.
Well,
Can you tell us that now, that this won't impact any of the adjoining bogs?
Are you asking whether or not this project, which is, you know, conserving the land and reducing development, will affect their access to having water?
Yes, I'm asking if anything to do with this project would affect their access to drawing water to harvest their bogs.
That's my understanding, is that it would not affect that.
Let me just try to wrap this up one. If for some reason an unusual thing happened and it did affect them, they would then come to because we have a conservation restriction on it, they could come to you as the town and say, hey, this is affecting my water rights, even though it shouldn't happen.
Yeah.
Do they have recourse to come to us to get it fixed?
They could probably go to the state.
Yeah, I
Because
would
that's who gives
say
them the rights.
the conservation restriction itself, again, is not, you know, giving any rights or taking any water rights away from anyone. It's simply, you know, a legal document that's saying, you know, this property is being held from development, and, you know, here are the uses, you know, recreation, you know, if they're going to be doing some agriculture on some of those bogs, those uses are allowed. So, you know, this essentially would not affect.
So the Buzzard, just so I'm clear, so the Buzzards Bay Coalition could not say to bog owner A, who happens to be adjoining to this bog, sorry, that water is not available to you. You used it in the past, but you can't use it now. They would not be able to do that.
No.
That cannot
All
happen.
right, we'll put that one to bed.
It's my understanding that the Water Management Act takes precedent.
Can't hear you, Bob.
Yeah.
Fans on.
We could turn it off. You could,
Oh, okay.
you know, there's probably a button on it.
It's my understanding that the Water Management Act takes precedent
Yeah.
over any water use.
Okay.
Yep, it does.
Got it. All right, I guess while we're on this one, I'll ask my question. Was there some kind of formula in coming up with $728 per acre? I mean, that's what's 515 acres at $375,000. How'd that number come up?
That's actually pretty inexpensive.
Pretty
Yeah.
cheap. I'm just curious how you came up with it.
They came up with it. The overall project is much, much, much more than this. It's, as I understand it, to do the entire project, it's $5.8 million.
Yeah.
I guess my next question would be, if it gets granted at town meeting, the check gets cut to the conservation, And then they pay the owner, or they pay Buzzards Bay?
They're going to pay Buzzards Bay for the conservation restriction.
Right. So, Mr. Chair, if I can interrupt, so the town is not allowed to have a conservation they can't own the conservation restriction. So an organization like the Buzzards Bay Coalition is kind of doing us a favor by holding that restriction and by purchasing the property. I mean, it's a huge property.
Okay.
So.
Anybody have any questions? Mr. Ryan?
I do. So when this comes to vote at town meeting, are you going to take, like, say, for example, Part B? So Part B was written to see if the town will vote to appropriate the $375,000. So are we going to take them and are we going to individually vote Part B at town meeting? Was that the intent?
It all depends on the whim of the town meeting. For the past 2, maybe 3 years, the town meeting has been willing to take up all of the items at once.
I guess to your point, couldn't we, the select board, break it out into bullet points?
Well, so my issue is that you can't vote Part A separately from Part B because Part A, if I'm reading this right, already includes Part B. So if we were to vote on Part A at town meeting, it looks like it already covers B, C, D, and E. So if either you need to break them each out or A is not written correctly, because I guess the question is, how do you vote this at town meeting? Because, you know, if we just say, let's vote Part A according to this, then you don't vote B and C. So you've got to somehow either separate the first 2 items on their own line to be separately voted, or you got to just combine everything. That's what how have we done this in the past? That's my confusion.
In the past, the article for the past 2 years has been written, maybe 3 years, have been written just about like this. And,
Okay.
and I stood on town meeting floor and said, you want to vote for these, separately, or do you want to vote them all together? And the powers that be at town meetings decided that, voting them all together was fine. I don't have any problem with voting parts B, C, D, and E separately.
Yeah, so I guess where I'm coming from is that the first 2 items, the administrative expense and the track debt service, are included in A alone. They're not separated out, whereas, the appropriations for the items 3, 4, 5, and 6 are all separated out. So it's inconsistent the way the article is written in a sense. So if we're going to present this to town meeting, I'm just looking for a way to make it more consistent so the vote is cleaner and we know what we're voting for at town meeting.
If I may, Mr. Chair?
Sure.
So, Mr. Ryan, in my opinion, the first 2 are together because we kind of have to pay the debt service, and they need an administrator to do whatever their administration is. That's why those are together. The other ones are technically optional.
No, so correct. So if we voted Part A, which includes those, we just voted for everything. That's my point.
Yeah, that's the issue.
So Part A would have voted for all 6 of those items together.
No,
so you can't just vote on 1 and 2. You have to vote on Part A, which in its entirety includes everything.
If you look at the asterisks beside 3, 4, 5, and 6,
Yeah.
it says C parts B, C, D, and E below. These will be discussed and may be voted separately.
Okay, I just think it's going to be a very confusing article. I would make a recommendation.
But town meeting has managed to, figure this out before. And
So wouldn't it be as simple as taking the Part A out of the explanation and just leave that as the explanation, and then have A, B, C, and D as is, but put A as the allocations of the $30,000?
Exactly, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Simplify it, so we can vote it that way on each of the items. Yeah, that's what I would do.
Yeah. Your thoughts? Ken?
No, it seems clearer to me.
Okay.
All right, so the question of the board is, are we voting on this tonight or waiting to see a revised format layout?
I do have a couple of other quick questions. So the town's going to estimate, so it says the town appropriates $880,000, but the amounts add up to $821,150. Does that need to be corrected, or do we not, when you say, it does say estimated, but if you add up the appropriations, they're less than 880. So would you put the exact amount that you're voting in that line, or would you?
I think you would want to put more, because you can always go down at town meeting.
So you're going to appropriate $880,000, But where's the extra money going, I guess? Because are you basically saying that we're appropriating a ballpark here, and they can spend whatever they want in each of those items? Or are we saying that this is the exact amounts of the appropriation? If so, the 880 appears to be more than what those amounts add up to.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Estimated revenues and...
That's just informational, isn't it?
And that's just informational, and this was provided directly to me by the Director of Finance.
And also, I think, too, that we don't always know until the last minute how much we're getting from the state.
I see.
So those are the matching funds that we
Right.
get. And they can be 100%, they've been 100%, they can be 50%.
So it's saying of the estimated 880,000 that we think we're getting in, we're going to appropriate to these 6 items these exact amounts. Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. And then the reserve amounts that are here, so the open space reserves now has 273,761.18 in it. So then how does this 88,000 compare to what's actually in the balance today? What's the difference between what's being presented in the article and what the actual amounts are in the open space, historic, and housing reserve? There's a difference between what the balance is and what's being shown here. What's that mean? How do you interpret that?
If I may, Mr. Chair. So, and I don't mean to feel free any time to take over there. But the Community Preservation Act requires that you set aside 10% of whatever you get from the revenue and the matching funds from the state into each of those 3 categories.
Okay.
So that's why that number is there.
All right.
Yeah, but that gets a little more confusing now, because now we're spending more than the 880 between what we're spending on articles and what we're putting in reserves, which I think is fine. It's just a little confusing.
Yes, so I don't understand. If we're estimating we're bringing in 880, you're correct.
So the 880 is for the 1 through 6. The other part is a requirement, the 10% for each category.
Okay.
Right, those are just the reserves, and
Yeah.
we're required to put 10% into reserves.
So we have a notice from the finance director saying that the open space reserve has $273,000 in it. So now you're saying after this vote, it's going to have another $88,000 going into it?
That's correct.
Yes.
It just seems we're spending more than we got coming in. So that's what I'm saying.
Mr. Chair, if I could, I
Sure.
guess the way I read it, I read it the opposite way. The way I see it, going into the reserves is all the portion of the $880,000, right? That the money's going into the reserves.
Right.
And then coming out of the reserves, we're funding the 6 items at the top.
Got it.
That's the way I
That's
view it.
probably-
I'd have to check all the math here.
That
Makes
would
more
be good to
sense.
clarify that in
Yeah.
the informational part of the article. I think, so there was a question about whether we're going to approve this tonight, but it sounds like there's some rewording that's going to be happening. So I probably would recommend we wait for the rewording and then.
I would
and
agree.
then
I was going to ask
table
the
it
same
and then-
thing. Yeah, I would
and
like
then
to see
just
the
approve it and
wording.
maybe clarify a little bit about the reserves, going into the reserves, coming back out, and then you had some things you were changing on Part B anyhow. And then we just said we might want to make Part A cover items 1 and 2 so we can vote on them separately, if that's the way it's going to work.
You got all that, Bob?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, if I may. I mean,
Sure.
this is a process that happens every year. This is what we do every year.
Yeah, but Mr. Bentley said he has to correct some of the wording on some of the article anyhow, so before we vote for the final version, we probably should review the wording that's corrected, I think.
I agree with that.
That's my recommendation.
Same, Mr. Chairman, I believe there was a
I'm sorry.
vote to include it in the warrant.
It was.
Can we rescind that vote? And then take it up?
We
a little
made
further?
well, we're always going to have a CPC article in the warrant,
Yeah.
so I'm not sure if we need
So
to,
we can probably leave
all it
that.
is, just to
yeah,
include.
just to put it into the warrant.
Yeah.
So I guess before we put this thing to bed, I just had a couple of quick questions. When you say the cost for the historic photograph and the Wenham Cemetery fencing, everything else, do you guys go out and talk to someone, get a estimate? Or you said somebody came up with a number, and was that, comes from a third party, right?
Connie went out and got an estimate specifically for the fencing. And he also got a quote for surveying to make sure that the fencing is put put in correctly. So we have quotes for that. He estimated for the photographs. He came in with a number way lower than what we actually came up with. We felt that, particularly if he was, to spend $5,000 on preservation of photographs is cheap money.
Right. And the last one, the Union Society Extension Trim Repair and Replacement. I know it's historical, but that is not a town-owned property?
Not a what?
The town does not own that property,
No.
correct?
No, it's owned by the Union Society.
Okay. All right, I guess any other questions from the board other than just rejiggering the words and? No. Okay.
Okay.
All right, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next item, Article 15, request to raise stipends for the Planning Board and Zoning Board of Appeals members. Mr. Gannon, do you have any comment to make on this?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of items here, Mr. Chairman. One thing, I will be asking you not to include this article in the warrant, and I'd like to give you my reasoning for that. First is this is an additional appropriation that came forward this year, outside of the normal budgeting process. To balance the budget, we had to make some tough cuts. This is one of the cuts that we had to make to be able to balance the budget. This was an additional cost item that came in this year. After that happened, I did get a request from the Finance Committee to take a look at all the stipends across town. I guess this has come up in years past, and that study hasn't been done. I have reached out, or staff has reached out to the neighboring towns to come up with a comprehensive review of stipends in the town. And I'd prefer to do that than to do a piecemeal with just the Planning Board or the Zoning Board of Appeals. There's many stipends we do give out, and I want to make sure we're equitable at all those. So right now, I'm asking the board not to include this in the warrant.
Any questions from the board? No? All right then.
Sounds like a plan.
Do you need a motion?
Yeah.
Yes, please, yes.
I'll make a motion not to include Article 15 in the warrant.
I'll second that.
Okay. We have a motion, we have a second. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, 0, 4-0.
Thank you.
Okay, next one. Article 23, amend wetlands bylaw statement of jurisdiction to add reference to exemptions for land and agricultural use as permitted in the regulations of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act. Is that a Mr. Oh, say more. Nice to see you again, gentlemen.
Hello. Savory Moore, 12 South Main Street, Chairman of the Conservation Commission. I was here a couple of weeks ago with all of the articles that Conservation is proposing for town meeting this year, and this particular article had some typos in it, which made it not make sense, frankly. Repeated 2 things and left 1 out. So this is just the revised, repaired article that basically just adds language into each of these 3 portions of this of the existing article, numbers 1, 2, and 3, to include language that says as exempted by 310 CMR 10.04 for land and agricultural use. That same language is now added or returned to these 3 articles. It had been there in the past and at some point disappeared, and we feel that it's important to maintain that in the article. Even though it's a state law, we feel that it makes it easier for applicants to understand that it is part of our bylaws as well. So this is just correcting what was incorrect 2 weeks ago.
All right, any questions from the board?
So we had already voted to place this on the warrant. We just didn't vote to recommend it. I just was double checking. I think we just need to make a vote to approve it tonight, not to put it on the warrant.
I don't recall, did we vote to put it on the warrant?
That's what I was checking.
I believe we did vote to put it on the warrant.
I believe
I think we did too.
Okay.
And then we got into the details and find out we had wording
It
issues.
wouldn't hurt to do it again if the board is...
I move that we place this article on the warrant.
Second.
Motion, we have a second. All those in favor of putting the article on the warrant, please say aye.
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 Aye. 0, 4-0.
Now I'll
Thank
make a
you.
motion for the board to recommend the article.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
We have a
Second.
motion and we have a second. All right, any other questions, issues, or concerns?
I just want to say, good catch.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Just one question is, I get it that some words were deleted or moved out, or now they're being put back in place, but what problem does this actually cure? Was there a problem in the past?
I'll let you speak. There's not a problem, but applicants who have come before our commission many times in the past noticed that all of a sudden it was gone.
Yeah.
And they questioned us, what happened to it? Did things change? And we were kind of dumbfounded and said, no, things haven't changed at all. But they recognized that this language had disappeared from our bylaws. So we're just putting it back so that it's the way it was and the way that we expected it to be.
Yeah.
We did not make this change.
For clarity.
And I would just add, Emil
Are you
saying
changing the wordage now?
Carver.
Emil, are you changing it again?
No, I am not. I would just add a situation where this comes up. We have a lot of agriculture in Carver. A lot of it is cranberry bog, so that's working directly in wetlands. So a situation where this comes up is, a bog owner wants to do something on their property that is exempt, and they look at our bylaw and they don't see any language in here that references these exemptions. And so then they're confused. They think maybe they have to file because the town bylaw has to be stricter. It's stricter than the state regulations. So we want to make sure that people understand that, we're still accepting those exemptions in our bylaw when we're discussing agriculture. So it's not going to change the way that the commission operates. We've been working with agricultural exemptions, forever in this town.
Got it. All right. One more word, Mr. Hewens?
Thank you. Just one quick thing, too. I think it also helps abutters who see something happening on a bog, and now you guys can, it's right here. Not only is it state law, but, we do it, too.
One more question, Mr. Ryan.
Just a minor quick thing on paragraph 2, there's a odd colon in there. I don't know if that belongs in there or not, where it says within 100 feet of any bank. There's a character of a colon in there. Don't know if that was meant to be there, if you want to remove that.
That has always been in there. I think it's kind of saying build upon within 100 feet of, and then we're
colon.
Listing all of these resource areas.
It
That's
should
what I
really be
thought.
right after the word of, not on the next line. It looks like it's floating in midair.
It does look like it's floating in midair,
Yeah.
but okay.
Yeah, it's just
She knows.
change the margins and you
We
make it
can
right.
delete that space. I'm fully in support of that.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Thank
We have
you.
a motion and a second.
Did we already vote?
No, well, I'm going to vote now on the article itself. All
Okay.
those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Say aye. Aye. Oppose, 0. 4-0.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thanks for coming back.
Yeah.
Okay, Article 27, amend section 290-2-2, period 3. Use regulation schedule regarding mixed-use structures and dwelling units. Mr. Bott?
Evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, guest. I'm Tom Bottom, the town planner here in Carver, Mass. And these are a couple of zoning articles that are proposed for the warrant by the planning board. This particular one is just a housekeeping article. I think I gave you a couple sheets from my PowerPoint presentation. When we converted the zoning bylaw to the E-code, the electronic version that you can search, for some reason 2 lines got squozed together. So previously, there was a line for mixed-use structures and a line for dwelling units above commercial or office. So these 2 got squished together somehow
Into one item.
into one item, and the Ys and the SPs and the Ns got, I guess, I don't know if they averaged them, I don't quite know how that happened. But I went back and looked to see what we had on the paper copy. So this is just a housekeeping measure to correct that in the use table.
All right, so I'll make a motion to put this article on the warrant.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other questions, issues, concerns? Nope. All those in favor of adding Article 27 to the warrant, say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, 0. 4-0.
Yep.
And make a motion
I'll make a motion to recommend Article
In the
27.
past, we have not made motions to recommend or not recommend.
Oh.
Planning
We
board.
Planning
we
board.
still could. We could if we wanted to.
But
I guess we don't have to.
haven't in the past.
All right, then I'll withdraw my motion.
I'm open to it. What's the board's pleasure?
I'm fine with recommending it.
All right, motion to recommend.
Okay.
Okay, motion, and just to clarify, what this is a clerical issue from a standpoint of this resets the zoning. We're not voting, adding, or deducting anything. We're just making it clearer.
Housekeeping to clear an
I
air.
guess that makes sense.
It got merged into one box of the table, so that it has to be separated back out into the two separate rows. I think that's all we're doing here.
All right, so we have a motion, we have a second. Any other questions, issues, concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, 0. 0.
Mr. Chairman, if I could have one request from Mr. Bott. Mr. Bott, is there any way we could get some clarification as to the RAHCGBVBV? Could we get a table of contents in there, or some idea of, I know I don't have those memorized.
Yeah, neither do I. I look them up every time.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, next item. Article 30, to amend the Carver zoning bylaw to increase lot sizes.
Oh.
All right, so I guess would anyone like to make a motion to add this to the warrant?
I have a comment.
I'll look this one up again.
I guess we can discuss, well, I guess we can open for discussion first. Mr. Bott, you gave us a complete explanation the last time that you were here. So we've got a little bit of background, but Ms. Hewens, what are your
Yeah,
thoughts?
so back to...
Sorry, Mr. Bott, what's your question?
Well, I was going to give a little discussion, but we can let Mr. Bott do that
Yeah.
first.
So back to creating zoning articles for the warrant, and we had this discussion last year. As Massachusetts General Law 48, Section 5 says, the planning board, select board, regional planning agency are those bodies that are permitted to promote zoning for town meeting. It's been my experience that when a planning board follows 48, Section 5, it goes on the warrant because that's what the law is. And I know we had a discussion about this last year. And there was some confusion because while it was on the warrant, the planning board gave a recommendation not to approve the article. So it was very confusing last year. This year, the planning board has proposed this same article. The recommendation by the planning board is 5-0-0 for favorable action at town meeting. So there's no ambiguity at this point about who gets to propose an article and what the recommendation of the planning board is. And happy to talk about any of the particulars of this if you'd like.
Mr. Ryan?
I think at the last meeting, you had not met with the planning board yet, and you were going to be meeting with them to enter into the discussion. What was the discussion behind the article and the approving of the article? If you could recap that, that would...
Yeah, so this is an artifact from the 2001 master plan.
Yes.
We since have a 2017 master plan. And in the process of creating the 2017 master plan, the master plan committee looked at previous recommendations from the 2001 master plan. And in that process through the master plan committee, they opted for a number of things they didn't want to move forward. One of those was this particular article. As I've said before, this is 1990s zoning because this is a 2001 2001 master plan, so they were working on it in the 90s. And this was creating larger lots to preserve communities was something that was in fashion at the time, but has certainly fallen out of favor because they haven't found it creates any real benefit. It just creates bigger lots, increases the size of a lot, increases the cost of housing. So in the process of talking with the planning board, we went through what was in the 2001 master plan and how this fell off the 2017 master plan. There'll be a presentation. We'll post all the PowerPoints on the website. I haven't got them all posted yet. But this was one of those things that the planning board said, in spite of the fact that I made a fairly compelling case, I think, that this is not part of the 2017 master plan. They wanted a favorable recommendation on it and put it on the warrant.
Ms. Jones?
Thank you. So if I recall, one of the reasons back in 2001 when we wrote that plan, as Mr. Bott said, that was kind of 1990s planning ideas. And the thought was also that that would protect some more open space.
Correct.
And then it turned out that that didn't work at all. And this thing called smart growth came along, and the thing was not to make big lots, because all that does is give it put it into private hands, and then people can just do with it what they want, obviously. But if you create things like such as a conservation subdivision, the lots are slightly smaller, and you protect the land around it as a conservation piece. That's one kind of smart growth way of doing things. So although it seemed counterintuitive at the time, now it makes a lot of sense not to have two-lot zoning. For the reason Mr. Bott said, too, it just makes bigger houses, it costs more, which is all we need right now. Not. And it doesn't do anything to protect open space.
And I'm curious what the planning board's response was. You brought this up at the last meeting. Was this, as if this went to town meeting and got passed, that means that everybody that has acre and a half lot, 150 foot of frontage, now has a non-conforming lot?
That is correct.
So if they want to do something to their lot, they have to go through some kind of approval process?
They have to go to ZBA.
So in the PowerPoint that I produced for the planning board, like I said, I'll post, I did not bring PowerPoints in here because I have a meeting downstairs where my laptop is at. So the effects of the zoning change, this increase in zoning will make residential agricultural zone properties created since 1998 legally existing non-conforming lots. In the case of lots already developed, many applicants may need to go to the ZBA for permission to expand what now becomes a non-conforming use. You have a non-conforming lot, I want to expand my property on my non-conforming lot, you may have to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Yeah.
Undeveloped lots, where you don't have anything on them, with a minimum of 150 foot of frontage or a minimum of 60,000 square foot, may not be buildable at all without further relief from the Zoning Board of Appeals. So that's what the effect of creating that zoning would entail.
Yeah.
And Mr. Bott, I assume you made the planning board aware of those things. What was their argument to counter that?
I made that to the best of my ability, and they seem to think that this was fine. I cannot give you a rationale for why they said what they said. But
Okay.
I don't remember what I was going to say. But, I know what I was going to say. The current zoning is 60,000 square feet, so
Yes.
it's almost an acre and a half. And the frontage is 150 feet, so,
Yes.
which is what a lot of our houses are.
Right.
So what if there were a piece of land that was good with this zoning, now you can't build on it? I mean, that doesn't make a lot of sense.
So I guess the dilemma here is that if, we can vote to put it on the warrant just to bring it to the town to discuss, if
Right.
that's one option here.
We
Maybe
can also
that's-
recommend against it.
And we
Yeah.
could also recommend against it.
And
too.
that's
And
the
they're two
thing.
separate things,
Yeah.
but, so do we feel that we want to bring this to the voters? Is that I think that's the intent of the planning board is to, and I'm still trying to understand the reason for that. I understand the whole master plan thing and everything, but, I guess part of this is, do you just want to bring it to the voters and have the discussion and let them decide?
If I may, Mr. Chair, I think so, because as Mr. Bott pointed out,
Yeah.
apparently we really can't stop the planning board.
Right.
Nor should we.
Okay.
They have the right to put an article on the warrant.
All
We
right.
don't have to approve it or recommend it, so.
All right, so we have
Mr. Chairman,
Oh,
if I just could,
Mr.
I
Gannon?
do remember this conversation from last year. Town council does tell you that you have the right, you don't have to put this on the warrant.
Oh, really?
Correct.
Yeah.
Town council did make that, I'm sorry.
We did have that.
Correct.
Oh,
We did have
Last
that.
spring, if you recall, while I was here, so I do remember this conversation. Town council is quite clear that it is the select board warrant, or articles that go into that warrant are your, choice.
Just to expand on that, excuse me, that is absolutely how I remember it as well. But I think the reason last year we voted not to put it on the warrant was because the planning board
Voted
had voted not to recommend it.
Correct.
In this case, it's very different. The planning board has recommended it unanimously, so.
All right.
I have just one quick question. So, and I believe town council, I mean, in this particular case, I think that's good, because we could not put it on the warrant, but how does that jibe, Mr. Bott, with your understanding of the way the law's written? Didn't you say?
Yeah, so what we talked about last year is the way you put something on the warrant, the people who can create zoning for the warrant, the select board, the planning board, the RDA, 10 signatures on a petition. So when we get a petitioned article with 10 signatures on it, the planning board or the town is obliged to put it on the warrant. That's what the law says. 10 signatures for a town meeting petitioned article, 100 for a special town meeting article. So if the law says planning board, select board, RDA, 10 signatures can put something on the warrant, I look at them all the same way. If you cannot touch a petitioned article with 10 signatures on it, how is it then you could deny the planning board putting an article on the warrant because it's in that same chapter in the law? Select board, planning board, RDA, 10 signatures.
All right, I'll make a motion to put Article 30 on the warrant.
We have a motion, and do we have a second?
I mean, my feeling is town council told us that it's our warrant. I mean, it always has been. I don't know how to resolve this. I'm not definitely not a fan of this article, but that's.
Yeah, I'm not in favor of this article either, but I do think the planning board recommended it unanimously, and because of that, I think town meeting deserves the right to vote on it. So I'll second the motion.
Okay, yeah.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of putting it on the warrant, say aye. Aye. Opposed? 3-1.
No.
No.
Yep.
And I'll make a motion not to recommend Article 30.
I will second that motion.
We have a motion to not recommend Article 30, and we have a second. Any other questions, issues, or concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor of not recommending, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. 4-0.
4-0.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Bott.
you.
Thank you.
Next item, approval of the 2025 annual local election warrant, and to be included with the annual town meeting warrant. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the 2025 annual local election warrant to be included with the annual town meeting warrant.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 0. 4-0. Anyone like to make a motion to? What are we really doing? We're just adding it on. There's really no motion to approve, right? We haven't seen it. Do we have?
I just made a motion to approve adding it.
Adding
I
it, so
guess,
that's all we're
but
doing.
you
Yeah,
don't-
yeah,
yeah, But we don't vote on recommending it. No.
All right, next item, approval of Labor Council Clifford and Kenny rate increase for fiscal 2026.
So the request is
Just,
$250 per hour.
Dan, do you have any background on this, or what was the road rate?
And, you know, I don't have it written down, Mr. Chairman, so I apologize for that. I believe it was $240. I want to say it was a $10 increase, but I don't have it right in front of me, Mr. Chairman.
And what do you, not to put you on the spot, what's the Copeland Page rate? I know different attorneys, but is it?
I want to say the Copeland Page was $235 an hour.
And this is what, an hour?
$250 an hour.
250 is the,
We don't use them as often.
Correct. We don't use them as often. This is Labor Council.
No.
We have contract negotiations this year. They probably use more extensively, but generally that's just if there's a problem.
I understand that rates go up every year, and I understand that, and I don't particularly have any issue with this, but I would like to know how big the increase is. Would it be possible for us to postpone this till the next meeting, just so we can know what the current rate is? We know what the
He
change is.
just told us what the current rate is.
I thought you said you weren't.
No, I'm not quite sure. I want to say it was $10 an hour an increase here, so I thought, but let me double check. There's nothing wrong. They're looking for an increase.
Would anybody have an issue with that? I'd just like to know
Okay,
how
we have
big
plenty
the
of time
increase
here.
is, that's
okay
all.
to table.
And I apologize for that, Mr.
No,
Chairman.
that's fine. All right, so we'll table that for next meeting.
I think part of maybe that request too would be to know how often we use them, like how many hours did we use last year? Might be good to kind of know as a rough.
Like I say, this year is a little bit skewed because we do have contract negotiations, so they're
It will be skewed,
utilized
so
more.
it'll be higher this
On
year.
a typical year, yeah, we really don't.
Okay, thank you.
I'll look for typical hours.
Yeah.
Okay. Town administrator update.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chairman. One thing I'd like to start out, I want to congratulate the IT department. If you look out here, there's a large screen monitor that displays the town newsletter. We're going to have informational displayed for the town, you know, both the town administrator newsletter, the COA newsletter, the library. They sent out an email. I believe we converted over. And then we'll put information out there, you know, such as a town meeting coming up, you know, events that are happening around town.
I think it's great. I think one recommendation maybe to slow the rate down just to hear. It looked like it was going a little fast. If you're trying to read it, it's like, whoops, it disappeared.
agree.
So if he can probably adjust the rate to give you a little bit more time.
Almost to the end and it cuts.
I will make that recommendation too.
Thanks.
The next thing being, you know, last night I did attend the Finance Committee meeting. We had to review with about a third of the department heads. We have another meeting with the Finance Committee meeting tomorrow night, excuse me, along with the Capital Outlay Committee, and then another Finance Committee meeting on March 3rd, the night before, where they come in front of the Select Board for a joint meeting on March 4th to review the budget. So a lot of budget work going on behind the scenes here. Again, they've broken down into pretty much one-third, one-third, one-third with the department heads and reviewing those budgets with them. But that means that work is moving forward. It's going quite well. The one meeting I attended last night. Excuse me. The last thing I really have is really an update on the North Carver Water District. We did have a review of their budget. We sat down with the vice chair. The chairman was not available this day. This is the fiscal year 25 budget, so the year we're in right now. They did put out a request for proposals both for an engineering firm and a distribution system operator. They did not get any responses again to either one of those RFPs again. But again, now that we're getting closer to the end of the fiscal year and having a chance to review their budget a little bit more, their funds are becoming quite tight. So we have advised them to limit their spending until the end of this fiscal year, because there isn't an awful lot of funding in their budget right now for any kind of additional work, that's for sure. So
Can they deficit spend? I'm not sure if they can.
they would have to go to the Finance Committee and no, I don't believe they can deficit spend it. Sorry. Again, we did have a review. We think they're going to be okay, but as we get closer, again, we'll continue to monitor it. You know, there are certain debt payments that do have to be made, and we'll make sure those payments are made. But again, if we see them running into the red, we'll have to go to the Finance Committee for a reserve fund transfer.
Mr.
Thompson.
Mr. Cannon, just so we're clear and the people at home are clear, none of the, by asking the North Carver Water District to watch what they're spending, that's not going to affect any of the people that use North Carver water, right? They're going to continue to get their water like they always have.
Correct, correct. It
No
won't affect their service at all. Again, you know, things do happen, you know, just like a snowstorm, a pipe could break, you know, that would be repaired, it would be fixed. Again, we just have to go to the Finance Committee, get a reserve fund transfer if that happened. You know, they're getting really tight with their funds right now, so we have to be very cautious about how they spend their money. And we made them well aware of that, you know. Again, they will have a meeting also Wednesday night in front of the Finance Committee, and, you know, we'll have that discussion with them again.
I just wanted to make sure there were no issues with the water users. that's all.
No issues with water use.
Thank you.
And as far as I know, not asking for a number, but has there been any requests of the Finance Committee for any reimbursement, so they still have their budget number, right?
They're still working off their original budget.
Okay.
Correct. There's been no reserve fund transfers or requests at all. And that's all I have tonight, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Cannon. Next item, topics not necessarily anticipated by the chair within 48 hours in advance of meeting. Seeing none, any select board announcements? Ms. Hewens?
I have nothing really. I'd like to make my usual statement about Shane Gives Thanks. They need anything you're willing to donate any time of year. And this is for anyone in need, and especially for veterans.
Mr. Ryan?
I'll just mention the Avenue of Honors. We've been meeting, and that's going very well. We're looking to do something for Memorial Day, so we would like to have more applicants, and you can go to the webpage and contact Celestine Cruz for applicants for that. So Ms. Hewins, we have about 21, 22 applicants now,
Something
roughly.
like that, yes. Yes, and for the time being, we have 25 polls.
And we have
so.
25 polls. We're looking to double, maybe quadruple that. So we met with Mr. Woods last night to see how we can accommodate maybe some more honorees on the polls. So he's going to look into the hardware to do that. So that's coming along well. I think that'll be good to have that happen. And by Memorial Day is our target. And the Plymouth Airport Community Advisory Committee's first meeting is going to be this week on Thursday, so I'll report back on how that goes. But I think initially it's just a kickoff meeting to get started. And other than that, Mr. Townsend has declared that winter's over, so he's saying enjoy the nice weather and if you can't come back.
I'm worried that putting that out in public might get winter right back in it. I hope you didn't jinx us, Mr.
If it comes back, please call.
Yes, please go.
Any comments, Mr. Townsend?
All right, thanks. I would just like to congratulate our town council, Greg Corbo. He was just named Lawyer of the Year last week by Massachusetts Lawyers Weekly, so congratulations, Mr.
Congratulations.
Great. I also wanted to, as Ms. Hewins talked about, Shane gives thanks. Didn't we recently do a food?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wish I had
Comment
mentioned it
about
during my, yes, we did. We had a contest amongst town staff here in Town Hall about which department could raise the most amount of items. I believe we brought in over 800 items to donate to Shane Gives Thanks. So
Wonderful.
I was very successful. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. All right, our next meeting is March 4th. Would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
A motion with a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye, opposed, 0. 4-0. Thank you, and good night, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.